Well, good afternoon. Thank you for watching. And thank you to the members who are here in the flesh and online joining us in the studio. This is the salubrious South Oxford Community Centre. I don't think we'll bother to come here another time. But anyway, here we are. And it's the agenda starts with my report, which I'm going to get straight into. So, first of all, it's a welcome, and there's a couple of apologies. I think Guy can't make it, and what's that about? Get off. And who else apologised? I can't remember, but I will put it in the minutes. Okay. In which case, I'm going to record this. So I'll change the, oh, that would require me to change the log on. Yeah, so we'll have to wait until it becomes a podcast rather than recording it live. Okay, so my report. 2023/4 has been another eventful year for AUK. So I'll start by welcoming many new members because recruitment is on the up, and Ferran will be giving us his treasurer and membership secretary report about that soon. And first of all, I want to say that we couldn't manage without Ferran. He's is that somebody else wanting to get in, Jeffrey? We've got another attendee coming. Thank you, Jeffrey. And I'd like to welcome some people who they've joined, but they can't reveal their identity for reasons of personal safety. So, going on to our branches, the Northern branch is performing well under the leadership of Guy Otten and Jeffrey Berg. They hold in-person meetings every month with guest speakers. And they've actually invited me very kindly to speak to them for their October meeting. Now, going back to the beginning of the 23/24 year, welcome, hello.
This was open to all, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yes, yes. So, can I introduce you? I'm John Richards.
I know you're John Richards. I've seen you on the telly.
Yes, that's right. It's Jeffrey Berg. Stephen Law is our speaker for this afternoon after we've had our meeting. And
Robinson. No, we've already met you.
And Mike.
Mike Hardy. I'm Steve Kirkman. I'm hopefully a member of AGM and UK. I did join one time, but I'm not sure if I'm still a fully payment member. So.
Well, Ferran, did you hear that? You've got somebody who wants to have his membership checked. Phil Robinson?
Steve Kirkman.
Sorry, Steve Kirkman.
You can check me as well, because I'm not sure either.
Okay. Well, I'm sure these people have made the effort, so I'm sure they will rejoin if they've lapsed.
Not a problem.
Great. Okay. So going back to the beginning of the 23/24 year, which was September for us, we staged a sold-out event in Birmingham with speakers in the form of A.C. Grayling, Professor A.C. Grayling, who, as you know, is our honorary president, and Mariam Namazi, Florence Krauss, and Richard Dawkins. And thanks to that meeting, that event, we met for the first time and have kept in touch with many kindred spirits in the Midlands. We have hopes of starting a Midlands branch based on those people from this part of the world. And we also have hopes of starting a Bristol branch, which reminds me, the other apology I got was from Don Cameron. Thank you, Jeffrey. This May, we staged a public event in London. Now, sadly, we didn't attract the large audiences we were getting last year due to, we think, economic circumstances, and we had to lose our deposit and downsized to a smaller venue. And some of us who are present today attended that in Greenwich. Yes, Stephen was there, you were there, Jeffrey, and several others. We had a good lineup of speakers in the form of Nuria Khan, who, for reasons of safety and security, delivered her presentation by video. David Orenstein flew over from New York to give us his presentation. Sanal Edamaruku came in from Finland, and Chris French is the local boy in Greenwich, and Lawrence Krauss, who came over from Canada. And it was Lawrence's birthday. So we had a little celebration featuring cake. And some videos of their presentations have been uploaded to our channel. And I can report, looking to the future, that we have a fantastic event scheduled for December in London. We're calling it Hitchmas because it will be held on the date of the sad death of our hero, Christopher Hitchens. And details of this will appear soon. At the moment, we are negotiating with a couple of venues, maybe 3 venues, to decide which one is the most suitable for us. But I can tell you that the attendees will include Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, and Stephen Fry. So that is an event to put in your calendar. It's either December the 14th or December the 15th. To make that evening available if you possibly can. So we've drafted a letter to the new PM, Sir Keir Starmer, and it concerns some of our fears about the possibility of opening a back door to allow the return of blasphemy by restricting free speech on the spurious grounds of Islamophobia. And there's some other recommendations for improvements to our institutions that we would like to see enacted. Now, if you're willing, I will read this proposed speech out to you, to Sir Keir from us. Okay? So it says, Atheism UK congratulates you on your election success. We particularly applaud you, Sir Keir, for taking the secular affirmation. And we heartily support your intention to be a listening government, so we're taking this opportunity to give you some views from the perspective of AUK. Our points are based on the following facts. Point 1. Polls and censuses show that non-believers are now the majority in the UK. Oh, welcome, Guy. Polls and censuses show that non-believers are now the majority in the UK. I think you might have some other source switched on, Guy. You need to shut down any other feeds you've got from us, otherwise we'll feedback. So, where was I? Oh, yes. The current Parliament consists of 40% of MPs who took that secular oath. Point 3, the Anglican Church is in permanent decline. Sunday attendance is less than 1%, and congregations are elderly.
Here we say continuing the decline.
That's true, yes, because it's a trend, isn't it? Yes. It is senseless, this is point 4, to appoint Anglican bishops from the English sect to the exclusion of members of sister denominations of the Christian religion in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Point 5.
Particularly omitting us as the 40% plus not doing.
Exactly, yes. Point 5, we are now a multi-faith nation. Point 6.
Can we say multi-faith and non-faith?
Yes, yes.
Because I think we're in there.
Thank you for that amendment. I'll put that in. And you need to find my pen. No? Oh, okay. Remind me later.
I can use that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, yes, I haven't posted him this this letter yet, so I've modified it now. Thank you. And finally, point 6, the opinions of the religious of all faiths are 50 years out of date. They are homophobic, commonly, patronizingly authoritarian, and very often misogynistic. Excuse me? Stephen, can't you get on? Oh, well, oh, that's okay then. Yeah, you've come by the wrong link. If you want to speak, you'll have to go to the later link I sent you. That I sent. Oh, I sent it to the council members only. And maybe it's gone into your spam. It's a link to the studio, as we say, us techies. Okay. Well, thanks for calling. Anyway, okay. I'm in the middle of my presentation. I will carry on. So, carrying on with the letter to Sir Keir. The House of Lords / disestablishment. This is the next subheading. The upper house does need revising, and it's good that you have shown intention, but you're missing the target. The 92 remaining hereditaries are pretty harmless. Indeed, they may bring some valuable non-party senior experience to the job of lawmaking. It's the 26 Anglican bishops that should be removed urgently. The only other countries that give rights to clerics to be in government are Afghanistan, Iran, Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Vatican City, and Yemen. Is that the company that the UK wishes to keep on the international stage?
I think we need to say government rather than government.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for that. I'm glad you came. It is a draft, so yeah. Anglicanism is no respecter of sexual equality. Only 5 of the Lords Spiritual are female. Surely our government should not be privileging male Anglican bishops. Subheading, whatever number it is, 3, I think. Prayers at the start of sessions. It is patently ludicrous to use getting a seat in the Chamber of Commons as an excuse to obtain an audience for Christian prayers. This is anachronistic on many of the bullet points listed above. Next subheading, the King's speech. Our King, who has previously expressed a wish to be monarch of all the faiths, is required to read out a speech pervaded with religious language. Oddly, the rules require him to read in a non-expressive monotone, but the content can be extremely biased towards Anglican Christianity. This is inconsistent and ridiculous. Going on to secular culture and education. It is not criminal to criticize a religion in the UK, despite attempts by Islamists to conflate their faith with race, politics, and law. But we've seen a rise in anti-British culture lately. Fundamentalists are attempting to impose Sharia law in our schools, political parties, and government, and the police stand and watch while they march, openly calling for the extermination of Jews. Sadly, this has motivated the ignorant far right to protest violently against all immigrants, even in the absence of evidence of guilt. Muslims come from many different ethnicities and from nations with many different cultures. Some are democracies, some are dictatorships. They are not monolithic. Please do not single out Islamophobia for privileged treatment in the form of special laws banning criticism of Islam. Most Muslims are moderates.
I wouldn't say that.
You're entitled to your opinion. This is going
I like that last paragraph, but it's punchy.
great.
I would
Thank you.
add to Islamists, Zionists.
Oh, we could, yes, good point, yes. Yeah. Any
Because
sort
quite
of,
frankly, the
any-
new terrorist is a Zionist.
any sort of extremists, any fundamentalists,
Yeah, yes.
yeah, I can accept that. Okay. So, carrying on with that,
Sorry,
that theme.
Yes.
Well, that's okay, I'm very liberal. Don't fall into their trap of conflating Islam with race, morality, justice, and a right to govern. The risk is one of bringing back blasphemy by the back door. And it's taken us, I don't know how many hundreds of years. It's only recently been discontinued, the law against blasphemy.
Selective blasphemy, because it's only for Muslims.
Yes.
It matter with selective blasphemy.
Yes. Hate speech is different. It's condoning and inciting harm to individuals, and perhaps it should continue to be illegal, but it has no correlation with skin color, ethnicity, religion, or origin. Please do not muddy this water. Faith schools are an abomination. We know what introducing religious division to the young produces. We've seen it in Northern Ireland. State schools should be secular, not sectarian, and religious curricula should be multi-faith. We want our children to be educated in all the major worldviews. This should include atheism, agnosticism, humanism, atheism, etc.
Well, I did once write to an MP to say it should be part of sociology, religion.
Not a distinct subject, yes indeed, but that's perhaps going into greater detail that we need to in this message. Excuse me. The only way, that's the only way our children can make an informed choice as they mature. There is no evidence for the existence of any creator deity. In the absence of evidence, the rational position is skepticism. So there is no reason for any religion requiring submission to such a supposed entity. Thank you for your attention. Yours faithfully, John Richards, Executive President of Atheism UK.
I think when we at the beginning, when you sort of congratulated him, we do need to say, well, while not being politically aligned with the UK, well, not.
That's a good point. Yes. Thank you.
Even that, and of course, at least most of the political space.
Well, this is the benefit, you see, of being able to merge brains.
Yeah.
Because I had intended to put that in, we've talked about it before. Well, we are not.
John, can I make a point?
Sure, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm always nervous when I hear phrases like, there is no evidence for God's. There is evidence, but it's just bad evidence.
Well, yes.
There's no credible evidence.
Okay, well, I'll put credible in then.
Probative is better than credible, isn't it? Because credible to the credulous.
So what?
Probative.
Credible, yeah.
Yeah, probative. Okay.
Or probative. Yeah, good. Probative is good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll change it to that now. We are non-political.
Not politically aligned.
Aligned, yeah, not politically, okay, aligned. What was the rest of the sentence? I can't remember what you said now. While we are not politically aligned.
Well, when you congratulate him, you
Yeah.
say at the very beginning.
Okay,
You
right.
say,
So,
while we're not politically
yeah, good point. So to the beginning, right. Thank
Maybe
you.
it isn't more political spectrum.
Yeah, thank you. Right, so that's the letter.
Just also on the point of the faith schools,
Hmm.
I don't have children myself. I do understand this woke culture, you're not allowed to influence your children. They've got different gender identities, if they want to identify as they or them. But why are the faith schools allowed to exist? Because that is conditioning, taking away choice.
Yes, yes,
So
indeed.
why are they protected?
Yes, that's why we suggested they should be secular, not sectarian. Have no privileges. Yeah.
So just to clarify what you said there, are you
So,
identifying woke with being sensitive to people's gender identity?
yeah, I mean, there was a story about.
Can I, sorry,
Oh, sorry.
can I shut down the discussion of woke? It's not a faith-based matter.
Yeah.
So while I'm happy to chat to you informally about it, I don't think it's part of this meeting. Okay, thank you. So about our campaigns.
You send it to Storm. Can you send a reply to the corresponding clause? Send a copy to those on Robert at the all-party humans groups.
Yes. Well,
If they know about.
I will ask the advice of the council for destinations for this email. Okay,
Yeah.
we can make a list of people that should be informed, including maybe the media, of our correspondence with the Prime Minister. Okay.
His clerks.
Well, whether it produces a result or not is not. It's nothing we can control. So, moving on to our campaigns. The biggest campaign that we have in prospect, apart from Hitchmas, which is an event for us and for the general public, anybody who wants to attend, our biggest campaign in prospect is called Break Free! Exclamation mark. And the rationale goes like this. We're very divided. There's atheists, agnostics, non-believers, humanists, secularists, rationalists, you name it. And what we are doing there is making ourselves less powerful. United, we are strong, but we don't unite. In fact, we're like cats that are difficult to herd. So we've identified one banner under which we all might be able to march. The one thing that we can all agree about is that it's crazy to submit to a non-evidential God. Now, at the moment, society is polarizing. And what we want to do is not align with one side or the other. That merely perpetuates the conflict. What we need to do is become the referees. We need to rise above their disagreements and point out that they're groundless. Their gods are non-evidential. I know that there's disagreements about even what evidence counts as, but there you go. You know my view, guys. I'm coming from the point of view that scientific evidence is the stuff we want. So the idea of Break Free is a effigy, I suppose, and I've discussed this with AC Grayling. Initially, I came up with the idea of a mannequin with a puppet controller above and wires going to the arms and the hand controlling the mannequin, the puppeteer coming out of the clouds. That's rather complicated. So AC Grayling suggested that maybe we should just have a head, perhaps wearing an anguished expression on the face, the cranium removed, the cerebral hemispheres exposed, wires coming down from a hand rather than a puppet controller, the hand fading away into invisibility, and the wires leading to electrodes on the brain. Because as AC pointed out, that's the bit of the body that's actually affected by this belief system. So that makes a more economical image, which could be drawn in a simple line drawing form and reduced or expanded to be printable on everything from button badges to t-shirts to mugs and key fobs and you name it. And the title, Break Free, is a very concise, punchy message. Furthermore, it resonates with the famous song by Queen. Okay, so we're having a logo designed for button badges and for other merchandise. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get the backing of Sir Dr. Brian May, the guitarist from Queen? And it's not impossible, we might do that. And furthermore, one of our collaborators is writing new lyrics that could be used to revise the song more to our purpose. But the point is here, what we've got to do is weaponize the referees in society. We've got to try to, I think it's the words of W.H. Auden, the center must hold. We've got to stop these scrapping kids. And the only way we can do that is by motivating the middle, the silent majority. Let's unsilence that majority. Okay, I'm just coming to the end of my presentation, which finishes with the council has held monthly online meetings. So I'd like to thank all the members of the council. We've only got one here today, a bit in person, but we've got 3 more online watching us. Thank you, Guy, Rich, and Ferran.
I was saying that you might as well add that I'm very pleased with my book has been translated into Spanish.
Yes, if you give it to me, Jeffrey, I'll put it on the screen. Jeffrey's written the book. It's
about 15 years ago.
yes, it's
been translated by a Peruvian professor.
And it's been in English for all that time, but now it's also available in Spanish. Isn't that marvelous? Thank you, Jeffrey. Well done.
I'm very pleased with that.
Great. So, finishing up, I'd like to thank all the members of the council, many of whom do sterling work behind the scenes and don't get appreciated the way they should. So, thank you. And thank you for your attention. Now, Ferran, it comes to your report. Are you able to read, or do you want, I've got a copy I could read out if you aren't.
Hi, everyone. I will deliver the 2024 UK AGM Financial and Membership Report. On the financial front, the year-on-year reserves have actually diminished slightly, around £100. The balance currently stands around £10,200. And well, last year's AGM, which also took place in August, was 10,300. So as I said, £100 decrease. The reason for it is the income from the membership and the subscriptions have not been able to compensate the loss of £925 for the May event in Greenwich. When it comes now, I will actually have to put a note that although I'm going to be mixing two reporting years. One of them is from AGM to AGM. Another one is the financial years, which are April to March. But when it comes to the financial accounts for this year, 23-24, finishing on the 31st of March have been submitted and approved by Companies House, and that show a surplus of £1,000, which has been the kind of constant for the last 2-3 financial years, basically. For this means that for the coming year, for the 2024-2025, we're probably going to be reporting a loss, or if lucky, we will break even. I'm going to just run a quick summary of the major events in 2023 and 24, and that covers from June 2023 to May 2025. So, which is in June 2023, we had the Tabernacle event that had actually a final surplus for AUK of £170, which given into account that the total income was £5,000 was actually very, very low. But the event was successful as a kind of it was a very successful event, although financially was actually basically no profit making or no surplus making. When it comes to the Birmingham event, we ended up ended up with a £100 loss because of the travel expenses for the unaccounted travel expenses for Mariam Namasi. And the total income of that was 2,200. Basically, these two events were run too close to the margin, and that's why any an eventful situation just brings you to a small loss. And now we come back to the last event, the Start of Greenwich event, which unfortunately made a £925 loss. That would have been 2,000 if we had been in China Exchange, with a total income of 324. So just kind of, we have to be very careful when we plan events, especially of this magnitude, because well, it's not a good business to actually not to manage properly the funds that we're collecting from the membership and subscriptions. But as I said, we still have a decent reserves, but we have to be very careful on how we invest them. So for the continuity of the organization. When it comes to membership, I'm talking about fully paid members. The current count is 132, and same time last year, August last year, it was 111. So that means around 10% increase in a year-on-year. This is a more moderate positive sign. I mean, it's difficult to tell the reasons, but it's a positive trend, although kind of moderate one. That's all from from the financials and the membership secretary side. Questions?
No questions, I think. Thank you, Ferran. That was wonderful. But you can see how we couldn't manage without it, can't you? Eh? I mean, what a treasurer. Yeah. So we've got somebody else trying to log in. I think it's probably Stephen. Richard, I'm going to ask you if you could carry on with the chairing. Is that possible? And whether you could get the agenda on screen? Because I can't do both. Richard, could you hear?
Stand by.
Yes.
Right, let me see if I can get that.
Okay. So welcome, Stephen. We've got a small and select group here in South Oxford. If you could just say who you are.
Steve Kirkman, hopefully a member of Acres of UK, but we've got to clarify that.
Jeffrey,
you're a fully paid member, Steve.
Oh, great. There you go. See, what a good treasure. Stephen Law, our speaker. Could you just say hello?
Hello.
Perfect. And Phil?
Yeah, hello, Phil Robinson. I hope I'm a paid up member, but I'm not sure.
I think Ferran will be looking at this right now. And Mike?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Mike Harley. I'm a relative member, but I guess I'm paid up.
Good, good. So Rich, are you ready to screen the agenda for me?
Yep. Let me see if I can. Can you not hang on? Present.
Oh yes, there it is. Okay, so I'm adding that. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, good. Okay, so we've got two items. Well, I'll let you carry on with the chairing now, okay?
Okay, no problem. So next item is the. Hang on. Where have I gone? Where has it gone? It's gone off. No, gone off my screen. That's always. Hang on.
It's being shared. We can see it.
Yep. So, presentation of the revision to Articles of Incorporation and Constitution, with amendments to be submitted by email and agreed to at an emergency general meeting.
Well, it's the Constitution Subcommittee which looks at it first when it's
Yes.
done, and then the council and then the members.
Yes, yes. In fact, we haven't succeeded in meeting the deadlines for this. So what is going to happen is we're going to have an extraordinary general meeting to ratify the change to our articles and constitution. And so we'll schedule that within a month because we need.
Or you need a constitutional subcommittee to have a look.
Yes.
At first, I mean, there's really chaos of it. Is it a person?
Yes, we need, it's got to be 21 days before the next general meeting, and during that time,
We'll have to.
They have the subcommittee.
What it actually is 21 days and that.
Yes, so it's going to be late September, I guess, before we can convene the AGM to ratify it. Okay, thank you for that. Rich, would you like to get back in the chair?
Okay. So is that all for the item? Is that all for that item?
Sorry?
Is that all for that item?
Oh, yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Appointment of officers to be postponed until the EGM.
Oh, I suggested the amendments which.
Would you like to speak your amendment to that, Jeffrey?
The amendment is that the present officers and council members continue in office until whichever is the earlier of an EGM and the next AGM, because otherwise we won't have anybody able to dispense funds or be in any position.
Yes. So I think are we quarry? Stephen, are we quarry?
With the internet, yeah.
Oh yes, including these people who are remote. Yes, we are. Yes. So can we have a vote on that to adopt Jeffrey's amendment?
Certainly. So can you just once again clarify the amendment, please?
The amendment is that the present officers and council members continue in office until whichever is the earlier of an EGM and the next AGM.
Jeffrey's proposing that. I'll second it.
Okay.
Officers is just true.
So can we have a... No. It's just to keep the officers that
It was
Jeffrey's put forward an amendment.
Yes.
To a motion which I certainly haven't seen, and I don't think you have, or have you?
It was on the agenda.
Agenda.
Yeah, you can read what it was actually said.
Yeah, that's really all I'm asking. I'm not in trouble or anything.
It has been.
Can I ask? Can I ask what it's an amendment to? Because I don't think we've got a substantive motion.
It's an amendment to number 6, which is the appointment of officers to the council.
I don't think the appointment is a motion. So I think it's what Jeffrey is suggesting is a procedural motion, which I support. but it's not an amendment to anything.
No, it's in fact what Jeffrey has proposed is a substantive amendment, is a substantive motion of its own, because it's not amending anything.
Correct.
So Jeffrey's just proposing that we stay on until such time either that
Yes,
that we
I agree.
a set of elections.
Yeah.
So can we have a show of hands? You've all got your electronic hands. Okay, if you could put your electronic hands up.
As well as the ones.
I can't
We have
find any
all got
electronic
electronic
hands, so
hands.
I'm voting
Let's
anyway.
put your physical hands too. I can see them on the screen.
Yeah.
So we've got 1, 2, 3 on the screen. Rich, oh yes,
You've
4
got
on
4 on
the
the
screen.
screen. You've got
Yes.
4 on the screen.
4 on the screen. Can I have a show of hands? Yes, please. Oh, you're not not a councillor.
It doesn't have to be a council.
Oh no, it's an AGM. You can show your hand. That is unanimous. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that. So we'll stay in place until we can actually submit in the elections. Item 7. I don't know how much of this is going to be a repeat of or a wider conversation of what was said in the President's report. But item 7 is events and campaigns.
Yes. We've covered it really, haven't we? And if anybody like to suggest any additional events or campaigns?
Well, it's not so much an event, but Northern Atheist, which we are affiliated with on our next meeting, September 3rd,
Yes.
Gladwell evening, getting the NSS historian, Bob Forder, to give a short talk, and then we're going to go through parts of the plea for atheism. So if we can perhaps inform all our members and have the linking available to us.
So it'll be a hybrid meeting, you'll be able to.
It'll be a hybrid, yes.
Fine.
But if you could inform all the whole membership, so.
Okay. Well, we've announced it here, and I can also circulate it in an email blast. I've been instructed to do that. Fine. Okay. Good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on or any other suggestions for any new campaigns that anybody would like us to have a look at?
Well, actually, I mean, I think we're all fully aware the elephant in the room these days in the modern world is Islam, Islamic ideology. And in view of that, I think it might be worth us reaching out to, for example, the Council of Ex-British Muslims or something like that.
Yes.
And doing a combined, because I went to a meeting once again held in secret, and what I heard there from some of the people there was staggering.
Yes.
Truly shocking. I mean,
yes.
So I really do think that the general public has to be aware of the real present danger with this ideology. It's as simple as that.
I've got a suggestion. Would you like to join a video recording of some of our council members and make points like that?
Well,
but I also understand on this particular point, really, we haven't had much success in liaising with the National Secular Society or with the Humanists on campaign, but there are some other societies, but certainly I think it needs to be not just us, but wider than us.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, simply in view of the fact that, the main, without doubt, the overriding issue here, and there's a threat to the modern world.
Yes.
Is Islamic ideology.
Not only in the UK.
No,
yes.
Absolutely.
And Jeffrey, you and I attended a National Secular Society meeting, which was on the subject of can Islam, I forget the actual title.
Oh, we had a very moderate, extremely moderate.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Which are the only ones who.
Yes.
But they're not really representative.
Well, unfortunately, they don't seem to be in control, do they? That's
definitely not. Not even a significant minority.
Yes.
But your suggestion is having some sort of joint presentation.
Yeah, I mean,
Get the message.
it's so important.
It is.
I mean, we can pussyfoot around the issue as much as we want, but these riots, you know, that have been, you know, people are, immigration is an issue, of course it's an issue, but what really is concerning people is, if you like, cultural detachment. And that really is, you know, to me, most reasonable people are totally, you know, race, colour, it's immaterial in the modern world.
Yes.
But what is not immaterial is an ideology that cannot rub shoulders with modern secular democracy or modern.
And wants to restrict non-Muslims. I mean, Hindus don't want to restrict non-Hindus.
Well,
Yeah, I'm tell you what, Hindus, that is.
The Hindu community are making the same noises now as the Islamic community.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so the Christian
not to the extent, not to say that the others can't.
Rich, should I call them to order? Because
Yeah, I think okay, right. Can we just one?
this is
It was just a
Right, hold
suggestion.
on. Sorry, I am.
Conversation.
yes.
Can
We'll certainly deal with that, and we'll have a special meeting for that purpose. But it's not the subject of our AGM.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Rich.
Sorry, I was about to say, can only one person speak at a time, please?
Yes.
And not interrupt when people are halfway through making a point.
Yes.
Because it doesn't help. It doesn't help us get our sort of points across. If somebody says something and you happen not to agree, or you want to make a further point, and you wait till the other person is finished. Okay, thank you. So. Where did we leave that? Where did we leave that? Because as I say, it got very confusing.
I think we're going to organise some further appointment between us to flesh this out and decide on our policy.
Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, any other ideas for campaigns? Right, I hear nothing. Final item then on the agenda. Any other business?
I just have a question about the plans, or the extent of the plans to set up a Bristol branch.
Okay.
You've come up from Bath, I
That's
believe.
right.
Yes, so you're within the Western region area.
Could we give the email address, put you into contact with Don Campbell?
Yes. We have some activists in that region.
Yeah, well, he's
I don't know whether you know Don, he's been in the humanist in Bath, in Bristol, for some time.
I'm not in the humanist.
We will connect you.
Lovely job.
Great, excellent news.
My contact details will be on the personnel form.
Yes. Great.
Well, that sounds very
Okay.
that sounds very enthusiastic.
Andy is watching. I better say hello to Andy. Thank you for watching. You're not in the studio, Andy, but you're obviously in the audience. So, great.
Okay. Any other items of any other business? I hear none. That brings the meeting then to a close. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you very much for those that were able to attend in person. My apologies that I couldn't. I'd got double booked, which I didn't realise I'd been double booked. Actually, I treble booked myself, and one thing had to go. So, so thank you everyone for turning up and contributing. And I hope to see everybody in real life in meet space at some point, hopefully soon.
Hitchmas, possibly.
If not before.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So thank you, Rich. So can I now introduce Stephen Law, he's freshly down from a precipitous mountain, and he's going to give us a presentation. So I need to upload it into this software. Give me a minute, please.
When you say upload it, you mean slides?
I mean import it into this software. It won't take a minute. If I can remember how to do it. Yeah, here we go. Slides. Your computer. Okay. Upload a file. It's going to find the file, hopefully. Yes. And there it is. Right. So if anybody needs a comfort break, this is probably a time to take it.
Oh,
Unless it's 3 hours long.
So I'm going to take everybody down who's remotely attending this meeting, and that means you'll be able to watch it, but you won't be in the studio. And I'm going to point the camera at Stephen, and then he will be able to operate his slides, which are currently uploading.
Oh, okay. How do I do that?
You'll be able to do that.
On my computer.
They're on this computer now, so you'll be able to do it here.
There's a lot of images.
So, look, I'll bring the computer over to you. Oh no, I won't, it's not long enough. Would you mind? So, perhaps put you here. Now, if you just sit there, and there's your camera, you'll be okay. And then when you want a new slide, you've got a little arrow there, or you can just go here and there's an arrow there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Great.
But you guys can't see it, so what you could do, maybe you could do this.
Yeah, you might get feedback if you watch it from there as well.
No, I'm going to just
Or
actually.
you could mute it on that one.
Actually show them the slides if I remember to change them. See those?
Great, so you've got the slides.
Maybe if you were on this side, would that help? And then hopefully that'll work. Sorry, you can have that one.
That's okay, I'll bring one around. Stephen gave this presentation, was it last week, to our friends at Greenwich. Chris French and his skeptics in the pub.
Yeah, okay. So you can see that.
Should we put you on screen? Oh, you are on screen, good.
Yeah, I think we're all good. Oh, that's massive for some reason. I'll just get that like that. Good. Okay. So yeah. So thank you for the invitation. So I'm going to talk to you about science and pseudoscience. I am a philosopher, so you're going to get a sort of philosopher's take on this question. And I'm not necessarily going to provide you with a nice, neat answer, but I'll give you some thoughts to take away, so you can make up your own minds about how to distinguish these things. So, so now you just told me how to do this and I've already forgotten.
It's just there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I just hit that one. Here we go.
Yeah.
Next slide. Okay, yeah, so this is what we're going to do. And I'll do the same thing there. Introduce the question. What is pseudoscience? We'll have a look at the hunt for necessary and sufficient conditions, which is really what we're engaged in, according to a lot of philosophers. We're trying to pin down the necessary and sufficient conditions for pseudoscience. So I'll just explain a little bit about that. We'll have a look at Popper and how Karl Popper famously attempts to distinguish science and pseudoscience. He's the person most people have heard of when it comes to this topic. And then I'll go sort of beyond that and give you some other thoughts too. I'm not going to give you a precise definition I'm even going to, but I am going to explain why. I'm not going to give you a precise definition. Okay.
Can I encourage you to speak up, please?
Yes.
The computer may not be picking up.
Okay. So, what is pseudoscience? I think we can, for the most part, identify it when we see it. You know it when you see it. Look at Feng Shui or phrenology or Christian Science. You immediately recognise that there's something rather flaky about the activities that these people are engaged in. But although we can recognise it when we see it, it's tricky to actually define the term. It is not the same thing as bad science. A scientist who falsifies data in the lab is not a pseudoscientist, they're just a bad scientist or a crap scientist or a dishonest scientist. Pseudoscience is something else, something different from bad science. So what is it exactly? Well, we're asking what is so-and-so, what is pseudoscience? Philosophers typically ask these questions: what is truth? What is the mind? What is science? What is justice? And so on. And it's often assumed that an adequate answer to the question will involve producing a list of what are known as necessary and sufficient conditions. So I'm just going to sort of go off on a bit of a tangent and explain to you what that involves. So some terms we can define in terms of necessary and sufficient conditions. So, for example, triangle. Something is a triangle if and only if it is a three straight-sided closed plane figure. So being a three straight-sided closed plane figure is sufficient to qualify something as a triangle, but it's also necessary. If you lack those attributes, then you're not a triangle. Similarly, we can give the necessary and sufficient conditions for someone to be a bachelor. They have to be unmarried and male, for example, or a stallion, a male horse, or a vixen, a female fox. So there are terms for which we can provide this kind of recipe, necessary and sufficient conditions. However, other terms, it becomes much more difficult to provide that kind of an analysis. And very often we find that we come up against, we attempt to give the definition, and then we run up against counter examples. So I'm going to give you some examples of that now. Let's take a simple example. What is a chair? You know a chair when you see it, of course, just like you know pseudoscience when you see it. But what are the necessary and sufficient conditions? Well, you could try maybe it's something made for sitting on. Seems quite plausible to begin with, but it doesn't take long for some clever dick to come up with a counterexample. A bicycle saddle is not a chair, but it is made to be sat on. So we've just conjured up an imaginary case, hypothetical case, bicycle saddle. Seems to be a straightforward counterexample to our definition. Another counterexample would be a boulder chair, by which I mean a boulder which happens to be chair-shaped by coincidence. And then you stick it in your garden and start using it as a chair. Well, now it's a chair, actually, in your garden, but no one made it or designed it for that purpose. So we have two counterexamples there, one of each kind, actually. So the bicycle saddle shows that being made for sitting on is not sufficient to qualify something as a chair, because bicycle saddles are made to be sat on, but they ain't chairs. Similarly, the boulder chair example shows that it is not a necessary condition either. The boulder chair is a chair, but it wasn't made to be sat on. So it's neither a necessary nor a sufficient condition being made to be sat on. And yet initially the suggestion seemed quite plausible. Here's another suggestion. Something is a chair if and only if it is used for sitting on and has legs. You might come up with that. Again, it's pretty easy to think of counterexamples. The boulder chair immediately springs to mind again, because it doesn't have legs. Bicycle saddle is at least used to be sat on. Swing chairs don't have legs, but they are chairs and so on. So you can see that it's tricky. Coming up with these recipes, often they're quite elusive. It's hard to pin down what the necessary and sufficient conditions are, and that goes to something as familiar as a chair, right? So when it comes to pseudoscience, obviously, it's even more of a challenge to come up with the necessary and sufficient conditions. Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, would go around Athens asking, but what is beauty? What is justice? What is courage? And people would come up with their definitions, and he would shoot them down in exactly the same way. He would provide counterexamples. He would ask the artist, what is beauty? He would ask the judge, what is justice? He would ask the general, what is courage? And in each case, they would come up with their definition, and Socrates would embarrass them by showing that he could think up counterexamples of one sort or the other. And this became so annoying to them that eventually they killed him. He was condemned to death officially for other reasons, but probably in part down to the fact that he was just really annoying to a lot of very important people. He was embarrassing them.
Too smart for his own good.
Yeah. So we run into similar labyrinths when it comes to defining science and pseudoscience. Just try filling it out. Something is pseudoscience if and only if it is ... It's easy to have a first stab at it, but you soon end up in trouble if you're not very, very clever. IFF, by the way, is short for if and only if. That's just a philosopher's abbreviation. It's tempting to appeal to, for example, the supernatural, and to suggest that supernatural explanations, those are the pseudo-scientific explanations. This is both a necessary and sufficient condition for something to be pseudo-scientific. That won't do, though. Actually, supernatural explanations can be scientifically investigable and testable. And in fact, they are tested. They have been tested. And failed, yeah. So supernatural claims can be perfectly decent scientific claims. They're just, so far as we can tell, false scientific claims. That doesn't make them pseudo-scientific. Secondly, many examples of pseudoscience do not involve the supernatural. Flat earthism, classic example of pseudoscience, nothing supernatural about it. It's not usually. So that doesn't seem to work, appealing to the supernatural. This philosopher, Laudan, having been struck by the difficulty that we have in defining pseudoscience, ended up concluding that it was just a sort of hollow phrase. It's a bit like the word weed, in gardening. What are the weeds? What makes something a weed? Well, nothing other than the fact that we don't like it. I mean, that's all there is to it. Yeah. It's just a kind of a term of abuse, really, or we're just letting people know how we feel about this plant in our garden. We don't want those, and we do want these, but there's no sort of way in which you can define in terms of necessary and sufficient conditions what a weed is, biologically or something like that. It's not going to work. So Laudan came to the conclusion that the word pseudoscience is just a sort of term of abuse, really. There's no real content to it. And that conclusion, he came to that conclusion precisely because he couldn't pin it down in terms of necessary and sufficient conditions. There may be other reasons, though, why we can't pin it down. So Wittgenstein, in his latest philosophy, suggests that some concepts are what he calls family resemblance concepts. This is a very useful idea, which you can take away and use in all sorts of contexts. Family resemblance concepts are concepts which work a bit like this. We notice overlapping similarities between a bunch of things. But there need not be one feature that they all share. So, for example, the members of the family, setting aside the fact that they're biologically related, right, they look similar, they kind of hang together. But if you were to try and identify the one feature that they all had in common, you know, the big nose or the red hair or whatever, there needn't be one feature that they all had in common. And yet, you know, they kind of hang together, and you can say, no, they resemble each other. So family resemblance then is a useful concept. Maybe some concepts are like that. And in fact, Wittgenstein famously suggests the concept of game is a family resemblance concept. He says, you know, what is it that all games have in common? You know, try and pin it down. Do they involve balls? Some do, some don't. Are they competitive? Some are, some aren't. What is the feature shared by all games that makes them games? His response is to say there isn't one. You don't need one thing that they all share by virtue of which they qualify as so-and-sos. And it may be that this is true of pseudoscience. Maybe the hunt for the one feature that is the defining characteristic that makes them all examples of pseudoscience. Maybe that's just a wild goose chase, philosopher's wild goose chase. In fact, I think Wittgenstein would consider Socrates' project of trying to find the one thing that all the just acts have in common by virtue of which they're just. It's a wild goose chase. Of course, you're never going to find it because it doesn't exist. But that's not to say that justice isn't a perfectly good concept. Yes, it is. So you can find this notion quite useful, I think, in a whole range of places. You know, after dinner conversations, what is art? Somebody asks, and 20 minutes are spent trying to pin down what art is. Well, maybe it's a wild goose chase. Maybe it's a family resemblance concept, and there is no one thing that all of only the works of art have in common in virtue of which they are works of art. The art critic Clive Bell famously said, there must be one thing that all visual works of art have in common, or else when we talk of works of art, we gibber, he said. It's pretty much a quotation. Once you've sort of taken on board Wittgenstein's point, you can see that need not be true. So maybe that's true of, I'll skip this bit. Maybe that's true of pseudoscience, so maybe it's a family resemblance concept. So the philosopher Massimo Pigliucci in New York, very good philosopher, probably very well known to the skeptic and secular community, writes on all sorts of things, including the Stoic philosophers. Anyway, he suggests that pseudoscience is probably a family resemblance concept. So it's just a mistake to try and find the one thing that all of the examples of pseudoscience have in common. Popper famously attempts to define pseudoscience or pin it down. Karl Popper, philosopher of science, 20th century, famously got into an altercation with Wittgenstein, in which Wittgenstein threatened Popper with a fire poker. David Edmonds wrote a book about that called Wittgenstein's Poker, if you're interested. Both very important philosophers and thinkers. Popper is what's known as a falsificationist, which is an account of how science progresses. Not many people sign up to that anymore, but still, what he has to say about pseudoscience is kind of interesting, I think, so I'm going to get into that a little bit. So Popper declares that falsifiability is both a necessary and sufficient condition for scientific status. If you've got a claim that can be falsified, it's scientific, or at least empirical. If it can't be falsified, it ain't. And falsifiability means you need to be able to have some evidence against it, such that we can now reasonably rule it out. That would be to falsify it. So he thinks that scientific claims make claims about the world, and in virtue of that, they run the risk of being false.
Yes.
The reality may not be the way it's claimed to be.
Yes.
And we may discover that by engaging in empirical inquiry. If you make a claim that actually has no consequences as far as what you might observe, as far as how the world is concerned, well, it's not a scientific claim at all. It's pseudoscience, or possibly religion or metaphysics, he says. So he thinks that falsifiability is a way to draw the line between statements belonging to the empirical sciences and all other statements, whether they are of a religious, metaphysical character or simply pseudo-scientific. That's how he attempts to draw the line. Tautologies are an obvious example of unfalsifiable propositions. So a tautology is just kind of structurally guaranteed to be true by virtue of the way that it's logically put together. I'm not both a man and not a man, guaranteed to be true. If I say that, I take no risk as far as reality is concerned. So it's not a scientific claim. Either I weigh 12 stone or I do not weigh 12 stone. Again, I'm not taking any risks, can't be falsified, not scientific. So these seem to be plausible examples of non-scientific statements. On Popper's view, Marx's theory of history and Freud's psychoanalytic theories of pseudoscience, they seem scientific, but on closer examination, they're unfalsifiable and so not science. So why are they unfalsifiable, these theories? For slightly different reasons. So Popper thinks that Freud's theories were just kind of vague and hard to pin down. So they didn't really have any empirical consequences right from the get-go because there just wasn't enough clarity in what was being asserted. Whereas Marx's theory of history and how history progresses, he thought that became unfalsifiable because of the certain strategy that the Marxists adopted. So I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. Laudin points out that it's often not the theory that's at fault when it comes to pseudoscience. And this is one of his criticisms of Popper and his demarcation between the scientific and the non-scientific or the pseudo-scientific. Laudin says, oh no, this is no good. Popper's wrong because, first of all, the theory need not be at fault. In fact, the theory can be straightforwardly falsifiable and indeed falsified. So, young Earth creationism, YEC, this is my example, not Laudin's, but young Earth creationism, they are really good at explaining away all the empirical evidence. Their view that the entire universe is less than 10,000 years old. That's what they believe. If you go on one of their websites, you'll see that they're amazingly ingenious at explaining away all of the evidence, from the fossil record to the White Cliffs of Dover, to light from distant stars, to all of those craters on the moon. Seemingly abundant evidence that the universe is a lot older than 6,000 years, which is their best guess. But no, they are really good at explaining that evidence away. And I would say that it's true that the theory is falsified. It was falsified. But these people just engage in strategies that are designed to kind of bat away the falsifications. Yeah. Now, Laudin says that so Popper's wrong then, but I'm not sure this is a good criticism because Popper said exactly this about Marx's theory of history. He said, oh, it was falsified. And then the Marxists decided to just endlessly start explaining away the evidence. What happened was Marx predicted that the revolution would occur in technologically advanced England, but it happened in comparatively backward-asked Russia. That was not what was predicted by the theory. And in order to deal with that falsification, the Marxists started having to cook up all sorts of excuses and explanations, just like the young Earth creationists. And at that point, then, the theory becomes unfalsified. So it's the strategy, in fact, that was what made it unfalsifiable. And yet Laudin thinks this is a criticism. I'm not sure this is a good criticism, but anyway, that's what he says.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
It seems that what goes on in the example of the creationist mind
Hmm.
is we can make up anything and claim it as a refutation of an old earth. And so they are prepared to go so far as to say, for example, God made it look old in order to deceive us from the truth that it is really young.
Hmm. That's not a refutation of it being an old earth. That's a way of squaring their theory that it's a very young earth with what appears to be very powerful evidence against that, the fossil record and the dates.
Yes. But
So
how do you address that? Because they're obviously, it's a weak
I'm
sort
about
of-
to do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Popper thought that the problem with Freud and Adler's psychoanalytic theories, not Marx, right, but Freud and also Adler, another psychoanalytic theory, he thought that the problem was that they were so vague that whatever happened, you could always say, oh yeah, look, my theories come out as true. There was so much latitude in the theories to begin with that they were just unfalsifiable right from the beginning. He tells the story about this. He says, as for Adler, I was much impressed by personal experience. Once in 1919, I reported to him a case, so Popper knew Adler, talked to him directly, which to me did not seem particularly Adlerian, but which he found no difficulty in analysing in terms of his theory of inferiority feelings, because that was Adler's part of Adler's explanation, although he had not even seen the child. So Popper was impressed by this. He thought he had a counterexample to Adler's theory, but Adler, voila, with a bit of ingenuity, he could show, oh no, it does kind of fit after all. So Popper believed the same is true of Freud's theories. They always seem to fit the evidence, and thus be supported by the evidence, no matter what evidence might turn up. And Popper illustrates by considering two situations, one in which a man pushes a child into water with the intention of drowning it, the other of which a man sacrifices himself to save a child. And Popper claimed that each event can easily be explained in either Freudian or Adlerian terms. It doesn't really matter what you observe, they're going to make their theories consistent with available evidence. And so they're unfalsifiable. They're unfalsifiable theories. Indeed, Popper noted he couldn't think of any human behaviour that couldn't be made to fit either theory. It was precisely this fact that they always fitted, they were always confirmed, which in the eyes of their admirers constituted the strongest argument in favour of these theories. It began to dawn on me that this apparent strength was in fact their weakness. It was the fact that they could not possibly be falsified.
Yes.
It was actually the problem with these theories. They weren't being confirmed at all. Something else is going on here. But it's interesting that he's talking about fit and confirmation there, and that I think is key. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute.
So two unfalsifiable now comes into the frame.
How do you mean?
Well, they've come up with something which is too far-fetched to be checkable.
Well, it's not far-fetched, but it's necessarily. It's not that it's far-fetched, but it's just sufficiently vague that no matter what happens, you can always say, oh yeah, my theory accounts for that. My theory fits the evidence. Yeah.
I couldn't express it better.
So the Marxist theory of history, on the other hand, was falsified, according to Popper. However, instead of accepting the refutations, the followers of Marx reinterpreted both the theory and the evidence in order to make them agree. In this way, they achieved fit. They rescued their theory from refutation, but they did so at the price of adopting a device or strategy which made it irrefutable. By this stratagem, they destroyed its much advertised claim to scientific status. So I think this is really also what the problem with young Earth creationism. It's straightforwardly falsified, but boy are they good at cooking up all sorts of defensive, methods of explaining away the evidence. What I particularly like about Popper's work here is that I think he's bang on when it comes to muddling up consistency and confirmation, which is exactly your what your question is focused on. He says, I found those of my friends who were admirers of Marx, Freud and Adler were impressed by a number of points common to these theories, and especially by their apparent explanatory power. These theories appear to be able to explain practically everything that happened within the fields to which they refer. The study of any of them seemed to have the effect of an intellectual conversion or revelation, opening your eyes to a new truth hidden from those not yet initiated. Once your eyes were thus opened, you saw confirmed instances everywhere. The world was full of verifications of the theory. Whatever happened always confirmed it. Thus its truth appeared manifest. And unbelievers were clearly people who did not want to see the manifest truth, who refused to see it, either because it was against their class interests, or because of their repressions, which were still unanalyzed and crying aloud for treatment. So I think this is a common feature of pseudoscience. The adherents very often think that anyone that's actually looked into their theory would see that it's just obviously true. And then the puzzle to them is why you can't see it. There must be something wrong with you. You've been got at somehow by them. You're part of the conspiracy. You must be, because you can't see what's lying in the obvious to them. What I think, in particular, Popper gets right is that he's right to put his finger on the fact that pseudoscientists muddle up consistency with confirmation. And this is a young Earth creationist, Ken Ham, got a great website called Answers in Genesis. And this is a quote from Ken Ham: increasing numbers of scientists are realizing that when you take the Bible as your basis and build your models of science and history upon it, all the evidence from the living animals and plants, the fossils and the cultures fits. This confirms that the Bible really is the word of God and can be trusted totally. So we're moving from fit, confirmation, to consistency to confirmation, as if they were the same thing.
Yes.
And they're not the same thing. So this is the one thing you definitely want to watch out for, I think, in terms of pseudoscience. This muddling up of the distinction between achieving consistency, which you can, basically any theory, no matter how ludicrous, you can always make it consistent with the evidence if you're sufficiently genius at explaining away the evidence and cooking up explanations. That's what Answers in Genesis do. You know, if I believe that dogs are spies from Venus, you might point to the fact that they can't even speak, let alone communicate with Venus. And I start picking up explanations. Well, they can speak, but they just keep it secret because obviously they're spies, right? They can communicate with Venus, but we can't find the radio in the dog's bed. It's in his brain. It's in his brain. We've x-rayed the dog's brain. We can't find the radio. It's made out of special alien organic material. You can just play that game forever. Any theory, no matter how ludicrous, you can always make it fit. That doesn't make it confirmed. Confirmation is something else entirely.
This is the dragon in the garage.
Yes, you can always. Well, I don't know. Tell me about the dragon in the garage.
Well, it's invisible.
Oh yes.
And
Yeah.
Even if you put a flower down, you can't see its footprints because it's just
Yes.
above the ground.
Yeah.
And that was flu, wasn't it?
Yeah. Flu's invisible gardener.
Right.
Yes. Which he borrowed from John Wisdom. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same game, basically. So that game, where you try and make your theories fit the evidence, I mean, when I do it with my dogs are spies from the planet Venus, you would take that to be indicative of the fact that I've got screws, really. I mean, that suggests there's something seriously wrong with it. I'm habitually thinking in that kind of way. But that is exactly how young creationists think, and indeed lots of other pseudoscientific folk. I think this is a bit controversial, this is also true of religion pretty generally. The problem of evil is, in my opinion, completely faithful to religion and powerful or good God, but boy, they're very good at cooking up explanations for the evil. How we doing? How we doing? Oh yeah, another quote. From Ken Ham, in which I think he's exhibiting the fact that Popper is right about this thought that somehow when you get sucked into these belief systems, what's really puzzling to you is when other people can't see that it's obviously true. So Ken Ham says, why can't the humanists and the evolutionists see that all of the evidence supports exactly what the Bible says? It is because they do not want to see it. It is not because the evidence is not there. They refuse to allow the evidence to be correctly interpreted in the light of biblical teaching. So I think Ken Ham nicely illustrates Popper's point there. But you end up puzzled. Why can't other people see that this is true? There must be part of the conspiracy. So I think that Popper gets certain things right. Oops. Well, that's not showing properly. But let's move on to the next one quickly. One last point I'll make before I stop then. Sometimes people link pseudoscience and bullshit, possibly helpfully. So what is bullshit? Well, a philosopher called Harry Frankfurt wrote a book, it's very thick, called On Bullshit a few years ago. Became a little minor classic of philosophy. And in that book, Harry Frankfurt defines the bullshitter as someone who is unconcerned with the truth of what they claim. So they're not liars, because liars know what the truth is, and they're concerned about the truth, and in particular they're concerned that you not believe it.
Deliberately misrepresenting it.
Yes. The bullshitter, on the other hand, just couldn't care less one way or the other, whether it's true or not. So bullshitters are different to liars, says Frankfurt. He
Don't
says,
I know somebody who wrote a book on bullshit apart from him?
yes, I also wrote a book on bullshit, but I don't agree with this definition of bullshit. But anyway, let's not get into that. So the bullshitter, says Frankfurt, is neither on the side of the true nor on the side of the false. His eye is not on the facts at all, as the eyes of the honest man and of the liar are, except insofar as they may be pertinent to his interest in getting away with what he says.
But isn't there a phenomenon that lies is often come to believe their own lies? So it's
They can do, yes. Yeah. Anyway, the key point is bullshitters just don't care. Can you think of anyone that might be?
Johnson.
Yeah, Boris Johnson, yeah.
Or across the Atlantic as well.
Oh, across the Atlantic.
Well, I'm right wing, so I don't agree.
Yeah.
Well, the Trump thing, I can't
Well, yeah.
altogether disagree, but it.
We're not political, Jeffrey.
Yes, here's a classic illustration. In The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's book, Trump claimed that the decorative tiles in the children's room at his Mar-a-Lago resort were made by Walt Disney personally. When Trump's butler asked him if that was really true, Trump replied, "Who cares?" I mean, it wasn't a lie. He wasn't really sure whether it was true or not. He just didn't care. He just said it for effect.
In fact, there's a very recent example of that because he claimed, he made a speech in which he said that nobody was attending, hardly anybody was attending Kamala Harris's
Right.
meetings. And then the next day he was interviewed and asked for the evidence of the actual size of the crowd.
Mm.
And he said, I don't know.
Mm. Yeah.
So the
Is it
answer-
true or is it false? Who cares?
The art of the deal was before we became a politician. And
It was, yes.
I was very critical of politicians.
Yes. Yeah. So now you could, excuse all the text on the slide, but you could, and James Ladyman, another philosopher of science, does suggest that pseudoscience is a bit like bullshit in effect. He says, pseudoscience is to science fraud as bullshit is to lies. So the science fraudster is deliberately fabricating, knowingly misrepresenting reality. Whereas the pseudoscientist is kind of indifferent to whether it's true or false. They don't really care about whether it's true or false. So they're kind of like bullshitters. within the realm of science. And that's James Ladyman's suggestion. James Ladyman, I mean, there's an obvious worry about that, which is that very often these people do seem to be seeking the truth. They seem to be concerned with it, but Ladyman says, no, not really. If you actually really look at what they're doing there, they're kind of deceiving themselves. They're not really concerned with the truth. They just are trying to convince themselves that they are. I don't think that's a good account of pseudoscience, because very often people who believe in pseudoscience do care passionately about whether or not what they do believe is true, and they bet their lives and the lives of their own children on it. And I can't see any way in which you can maintain the view that they don't really care about the truth if they're prepared to bet their child's life on it. So I'm not convinced by that way of characterising pseudoscience. So far as I'm concerned, I think that the best way of thinking about pseudoscience, and this is very rough, but it's basically employing methods that appear to be scientific, that ape the methods of science, but on closer examination, they're not really scientific at all. And
there are kind of degrees of pseudoscience.
there are,
aren't there?
yeah.
Complicates it.
That does, yeah. So you can, you know, the explaining away strategy is adopted by young Earth creationists. I mean, there it's just habitual. But you know, even genuine scientists do it a bit. You know, if I boil water and take the temperature and it's not boiling at 100 degrees centigrade, but it is when it's, oh my God, I falsified my theory. Now what you're likely to say is, oh, there must be something wrong with the filament, or oh, there must be, the air pressure is not what I thought it was, or you start explaining away. But you know, it's not that long before eventually you're going to, if you're a decent scientist, you're going to go, oh, no, actually, something's wrong. A certain amount of explaining away is legitimate, but when it's just habitual, like in young Earth creationism or Marxism, according to Popper, then it's pseudoscience. You're absolutely right, it's going to be a matter of different.
And there's your book.
Yeah, so in the book I identify various warning signs of bullshit, and indeed, but it fits, I call it, that is muddling up consistency and confirmation. Trying to show that your theory is consistent with the evidence, by hook or by crook, is not the same as showing that your theory is confirmed by the evidence. Completely different thing. And then another thing that they typically do is they pile up anecdotal evidence. So Christian Science, so-called, if you're familiar with it, the Christian Science reading room in Oxford. Christian Science, why is it science? But it's faith healing, is what it is. They call it science because they've got a really big book, in effect, of all of the cases where people have been prayed for and they got better. And they compile all of these cases and they go, voila, the evidence. It's science. But of course, that's just a pile of anecdotes. First of all, it's highly selective because they've only chosen the cases where there was a miraculous recovery, not the cases where there wasn't. They're also overlooking the fact that people get better anyway. So, you know, how many of these cases would have happened anyway? Maybe all of them. And then also you're relying on testimony from people who have a lot invested in this belief system. So you know that's not good evidence. But it can be made to look like science, and that is exactly why they call Christian Science science. It's pseudo science, but it looks sufficiently like the real thing that they at least convince themselves that that's what they're doing.
And they can convince people who don't know any better.
Yeah. So there's a quick summary for you. Trying to define pseudoscience, it is difficult to do, certainly in terms of pinning down necessary and sufficient conditions. Does our inability to pin it down in terms of necessary and sufficient conditions, so it's just an empty phrase? I don't think so. Possibly it's a family resemblance concept. We've looked at Popper's account of pseudoscience. I think there's something of value in there. We did look at some objections to Popper's account. We looked at pseudoscience and whether it's a kind of bullshit. I don't think it is, personally, but you know, make up your own minds. So what I've given you is finally a sort of rough and ready outline of what pseudoscience is, which is basically they're aping the methods of science.
Yeah, so I'm quite a respect for science.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I challenge in three ways? Is the first one provokes me enormously because it's all the things I dislike, Wittgenstein and Plato, Socrates, and linguistic philosophy, because as language, I think, is just not precise, and there's no use drawing up the truth out of language when it is a rather many means of communication between humans.
Well, that's kind of Wittgenstein's point, really, is that you're looking for a very precise definition of the sort you get for triangle within mathematics. You're looking for that kind of definition. When it comes to ordinary everyday concepts, and ordinary everyday concepts are just much messier than that, they're much more organic. And trying to impose some rigid mathematical crystalline grid upon ordinary language is just going to result
And some more than others, courage probably is defined if careful enough. Justice is by contrast, as has is between two poles, that of mercy and everybody getting their just deserts, which are different concepts within the word justice. Okay, so that makes it almost, if not completely, undefinable.
Well, I mean, ordinary everyday. I mean, Wittgenstein would say ordinary everyday language is perfectly. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly serviceable. We all know what a game is. We all know what a chair is. These are perfectly decent concepts. Just don't impose ludicrous standards on ordinary language, because that's going to generate philosophical confusion. So I think that's probably right. Yeah.
I bet there are some philosophers who disagree with you.
Of course, yeah. And in fact, there was even, if you're interested, there's a book by a man called Bernard Suits called There's Something in the Grass. I can't remember what it is. In which he offers the necessary and sufficient conditions for something to be a game. So I'll leave you with that, if you like.
Right.
So the necessary and sufficient conditions for something to be a game are that it involves, roughly, the overcoming of unnecessary obstacles, which is pretty good. Because if you think about it, football, the aim is to get the ball in the back of the net repeatedly, but you can only use your feet, and you're not allowed to go offside. And
So the other team.
Yeah, exactly. So you introduce unnecessary obstacles, and then you overcome them. Or playing solitaire, you need to get the cards lined up in a particular way, but you're only allowed to do it in a very restricted way. You set up obstacles for yourself, and then you overcome them. So that was Bernard Suits' definition of the game. I'll let you.
The second of my challenges when you talk about the argument from evil. Part of this book, one of the arguments they use, is that it does need to be tightened up, because they get away with a lot, as long as the world is sort of overall somehow good, it's enough for them. And the point is, God is the best possible creature. They would make the best possible world. And I say that, and then it becomes easier to say this isn't the best possible world, rather than just an unbalanced, really good.
Yeah, I don't think what you're saying contradicts anything I said.
I'm sorry, it's tightening.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've published a lot of work on the problems, so I'm quite familiar with it.
Can I have a couple of comments?
Yes.
First of all, I ought to apologise, because I sort of assumed that Stephen's fame would have preceded him, and that you all knew that his track record and his CV and everything. But what I should have said when I introduced him is, this is the Stephen Law who was a reader at Haythorpe.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah.
College until they closed it down.
Yeah.
And this is the Stephen Law who has written, I don't know how many books.
10-ish.
Yeah, he can't remember how many. and this is the Stephen Law who is the editor of Think, exclamation mark.
No exclamation mark, actually. Well, yeah, Journal of the Royal Institute of Philosophy.
Yes. And this is the Stephen Law who's currently I don't know, I'm not going to get your title right, but you're involved in further education from the university.
Oxford University Department of Education, yeah. And I was a research fellow before London and Oxford. But originally I was a postman Kicked out of school.
Well, as I disagree with Plato, it's not going to stop me from disagreeing with
Yes.
his view. I mean,
Oh, I've never said that before. It's very true.
what happens is most relevant is that there is an area where science becomes, at least at this moment, unable to verify or not verify. And that, for instance, is in the afterlife. Religious people say you have a soul that goes to heaven or hell.
Yes.
Now that is, well, potentially, I suppose, is discoverable. You might discover a soul someday.
Yes.
That is not my present thing. You might discover heaven or hell, but it is beyond the reach of science.
Yes.
And it becomes very much at the borderline of how they're important between in what's could be called pseudoscience and what's just beyond present science. And that's an important region in the religious argument.
Mm.
And I don't believe in an afterlife, but I don't think it's absolutely disprovable.
Well, it's claimed but not proven.
No, I think you can establish beyond reasonable doubt that there isn't one.
Well,
to do it? I'll do it.
I'll put it this way. What makes me hesitate to agree with you 100% on balance, and that I do agree that unprovable.
By the way, philosophers hate the word. Because it's ambiguous.
Assuming that I was more aware than I am or anybody is, when you're sort of a fetus in the womb, you wouldn't really believe there's a world outside the womb which you just go into, because that's beyond all experience. It's something which would seem more than improbable from that settled world there. So
Well, you simply have no clue when you're. You have no clue.
Well, I'm assuming if you had a clue, you wouldn't readily believe there's a world beyond the world you know, and of different kinds.
Probably not. No, but
and that's what makes me a little bit hesitant to say.
Yes. Well, I think
There's a further world beyond.
I think your hesitancy is misguided because we should show humility. Like theorists love to go on about how we all need to be humble and acknowledge that there are more things in heaven and earth than terms of in your philosophy, ratio, or whatever it is. So yeah, so it sums up to that. Then probably there are things that are beyond our comprehension and so on. But then they try and use that as a protective screen, which then makes certain things off limits to scientific investigation or reason. And, maybe there are some things back there that are beyond our ability to detect them. But that doesn't mean that you cannot establish conclusively that certain things are not behind the screen. You can establish conclusively, for example, that there's no all-powerful and supremely malevolent deity on the screen, because you look at what's on this side of the screen, it's too good. Right? This is conclusive evidence.
That's a logic, but I'm not sure that the afterlife is entirely within the disproved by logic. I believe in it on heavy balance.
No, that was empirical evidence. The quantity of good is more than sufficient to establish the non-existence of any kind of supremely powerful and malevolent deity behind the screen. Things may be hidden, but that doesn't mean that you can't conclusively, or pretty conclusively, falsify or confirm them. This is exactly what's said about the supernatural. Oh, it's off limits. No, it's not. The supernatural claims have empirically observable consequences. If petitionary prayer works, we can test it.
Yes.
We did, and it doesn't.
Yes. There's all separate issues. The Buddhists do it. The Hindus say, well, there's a soul that somehow being light.
There's good empirical evidence. There's good empirical evidence that your mentality is a product of what's going on in your brain, and that material causes, physical causes have physical causes. And once you've accepted that, and I think there's no option but to do that, then the songs become ridiculous.
I mean, the effect of heaven and hell would be a lot better if there was unequivocal proof that it existed, then we would all know where we're going.
Yeah.
Except we should never know anything to say.
No, not for certain, but that doesn't mean you can't know anything. I mean, that's why I hate the word proof. Because,
Me too.
yeah, so the word proof can mean proof beyond all possible doubt. Well, you can't prove, maybe that you exist, according to Descartes. I think therefore I am, therefore I can prove that maybe that. But yeah, the vast majority of claims about the external world you won't be able to prove. But then there's also proof in a court of law is proof beyond reasonable doubt. Now, proof beyond reasonable doubt, well, we can get that, and we do regularly because we lock people up.
But if it's contrary to logic, it's a different category. I mean, a square circle or whatever, we say it doesn't mean it's contrary to logic. It's a different category to whether there's some floating sphere out beyond observation.
Yeah, well, there are two ways you can establish things don't exist. One is empirically.
Yeah.
The other is by showing there's some kind of logical contradiction.
Yeah.
Not a great idea.
And the logical contradiction is more powerful than empirical.
Yes.
I think I'm giving you too much crack of the whip here.
Yeah.
Can some of the
I
rest.
disappeared off the.
So I wanted, when you were doing the demarcation bit,
Yes.
made me think of statistics.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, right, okay.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's from taxonomy, because
Right. Yes.
for a long while, taxonomy was about looking for similarities, with the forlorn hope that you might find single identifying characteristics into which you could class things.
Yeah.
But more recently, thanks to, I think, not Hugh, but the other guy, the probability guy,
Phase.
yeah. So and computers, we've tended to look for distinctions rather than similarities. So divisions between where things branch off rather than instead of putting them together, overlooking these differences. With statistics, you get lots of degrees as a result of looking for these. Oh, that's not the same as that.
I'm not sure. I don't know how this is related to it.
Well, I'm just wondering whether you're still talking about demarcation. Maybe think of that. I wonder if there's actually any parallel there in the process.
Maybe. I mean, you could see how certain weird systems of classification could be pseudo-scientific. Definitely. Because I don't know enough about that example.
Yeah.
That.
Another time, maybe.
What I guess I'm interested is what makes someone's mind work in a pseudo-scientific way,
Yeah.
as opposed to a more rational scientific way. Because
Yeah.
I think that's the key to. I mean, it's staggering in this day and age. There are so many people now. Either some people are just deniers, simply because that suits them. But presumably some people genuinely do believe it. And then of course they're the outright bullshitters. And what frightens me about, obviously, in relation to religion is that, I got a lot of sympathy for people who are culturally religious. It just goes on. That's what we've always done. Dawkins.
I'm getting really cheesed up with them. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You just go along.
Well, the motivation seems to be, sorry, I'm interrupting, but the motivation very often seems to be there's this concern with Islam and that we need to get Christianity in the mix in order to fend off the Islamic hordes.
Yeah.
I said, I don't buy into that personally, but anyway, look, where are you going with the?
Well, only then you've got the people who supposedly have studied, the texts, you know, theological college or whatever.
Hmm.
And they have either totally bought into the bullshit,
Yes.
or it's just a business.
Yes.
It just gives them a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, and then in
It's,
which case they are just frauds.
Yeah, I think you get both.
This is where I almost lose the plot, I think.
Yeah, well, see, I'm a philosopher, so that means basically I'm a sort of an I'm interested in what you can establish from the comfort of your armchair, which is quite a lot actually. But what I don't have the expertise in providing psychological explanations for why people have certain vulnerabilities and so on. Having said that, I know a little bit about the psychology. I mean, on one classic explanation would be cognitive dissonance. So Festinger, who came up with this idea, famously wrote a book called When Prophecy Fails, in which he investigated a little cult, who believed that the world was going to end, that a flying saucer was going to show up and rescue him just before the world ended. And so they all sat around waiting, clock ticking, on the appointed hour, and nothing happened. Okay, and so how did they respond? Well, Festinger discovered that they went on a recruitment drive, and they tried to bring more people in. I think with some success, more people into the cult. They didn't abandon their belief; they just doubled down on it and tried to bring more people in. Why did they try and bring more people in? Well, according to Festinger, because that provided them a reassurance that it couldn't be quite the bullshit that it seems to be. More generally, more generally, if you've invested a lot in a particular belief, I mean, if I believe that Shaman is near the Matterhorn, and somebody says, no, you've got that history, I'll go, oh, yes, okay. You'll change your belief, it's easy. But if you've invested a great deal in a belief, it becomes progressively more difficult to give it up. So if you've spent your entire career advertising cigarettes and somebody comes up with evidence that it causes lung cancer, you're going to improve resistance to that. If you've spent your life living with your wife and then somebody points out that there's evidence she's a serial killer, you're going to be extremely skeptical and find all sorts of ways to explain the evidence away, just like Ted Bundy's girlfriend or their wife did. If you have invested an awful lot in a religious belief, and people often do, a lot financially, socially, their entire career potentially. If you're presented with evidence contrary that threatens, boy, that's very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult for you. Or political beliefs. If you have invested a lot in political beliefs, and often you have, if somebody presents you with evidence that actually you've made a serious mistake, you're going to find ways to explain it away. So just go on social media and look at people that are from the left or from the right who have their views challenged. Evidentially, they're just doing the same stuff. They're just explaining away the evidence because they've invested so much in it. It's costly, emotionally very costly, socially costly to change your beliefs. So I think that's part of it. But I mean, it's not the whole explanation, but it's part of it.
I have a small piece of suicide today that I from the Quran. And it's this bit about Sirius and the Earth and the distance between. And if you read the Quran, there are 861 words between Sirius and the Earth. And if you look at the light year distance, it's 8.61 light year distance. It's like
And when I was young, it was 4 light years. I suppose it is that, astronomical science has changed.
the nearest star is 4.3 light years.
Yes, and it was the other way around.
Yeah.
Sirius was in the nearest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like the Bible code. That was the original.
Yeah.
Well, I think there used to be a Bode's law for astronomy, the distance of the planets and astronomical units. And that carried on for 100 years or more. So it was rubbish. But it did lead to the discovery of Pluto.
But more recently, the Hubble telescope, they found owns galaxies older than the world was then supposed to be. So it's that made billions of
That is
billion years.
scientifically embarrassing right now.
Check.
Yeah. So
Oh, before that happened.
my computer's going to run out of space in a minute, so I'm thinking that maybe we should bring this.
Yes, no, I've got to go shopping. So
Okay. Right. Well, what do we think?
pleasure.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And
We'll see you at Christmas.
you might do, yes. I can't remember what we're doing at that point. Have I?
Well, it's not absolutely certain which of the two nights it is yet. I can tell you a bit about this. There are two schools of thought, because I'm working with Lawrence Krauss because we co-sponsor these events. His Origins project and AUK.
Right.
And so far, I mean, Hitchmas is, I can't complain, it's my idea. And we tried to set it up last year and failed. But Lawrence has managed to, through his contacts, to get these really big celebrities, which is great. So I'd already organised for the Conway Hall. And it was available not on the Sunday, which is actually the date of the death, but on Saturday. So we've got that penciled in at the moment. But we're now looking at going big, because we've got AAA listers, I mean, Stephen Fry. So we're investigating the possibility of going to the park and getting a really huge attendance, maybe 2,500. Don't worry, we're not going to. I know you want it to be in an upstairs room above a pub.
Yeah. A big one, yeah.
Yeah, I know that. Yes, but we will not carry the can for this. Don't worry. But so at the moment, and the Barbican one will be on the Sunday. So just
Yeah. What is
Let's work
the? Just
on it.
I'll just stick it in now, just so I've got the.
14%, 15%.
yes.
Okay. I'll just make a note. Right. First game shops. 14th, 15th December.
And of course, we might have a few tickets available for honored guests. Like, for example, our honorary president. Unfortunately, AC can't be down in the country. But I'm just wondering whether you would like to be linked to a UK Stephen, in some capacity, advisor or something. Would you be willing to consider that?
Well, patron or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't got much free time. But yeah.
Well, no, neither's AC. But that's not the point. It's the connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Do you want to plug for patron, advisor?
Advisor sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. If
I'd say,
Got any
yeah,
good
the
advice?
council will have to agree.
Yeah.
President Paul's
Sign with the advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. What's philosophical?
Scientific advice.
Yeah.
When you were
Bullshit. Expert. Yeah.
When you were going on about you don't like proof, it made me think of, I don't know whether you've seen AC Grading's, he's got a presentation which he calls You Can Prove.
And negative. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, atheist, yes. And
Yeah. You know, ruled out. I think you can.
I've got a it's mostly audio recording of him doing that in our Birmingham event.
No.
I don't really have seen it, I haven't listened to it.
No.
I can link you to it next time we correspond.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I saw him quite recently in Finland. We'll have to do with it.
Oh, you were on the Baltic cruise?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to go to that.
Yeah. It was good.
Did you get big attendance and so? Yeah.
No, it was quite select. It was supposed to be a very small sort of mingling event, not like a big audience event.
Oh, does that mean that we was charging a lot for those who were paying more?
I don't think it.
He's a businessman, oh, that's that one.
Yeah, it was, no, I don't think anyone was paying. It's just that not everyone was having their expenses forward. No one was having it. I mean, you know, none of us, we all paid for our own flights, I think.
Yeah,
Including
yeah.
AC Radio.
I think that was the deal.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. Right, okay, I better get going.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we declare the event terminated. Is it going to say? Is there enough space?